It wasn't just a horror film. It was a seance captured on celluloid, an invocation of fear disguised as small-town paranoia. In a remote desert town, scorched by silence and shadows, children vanish without warning, and adults are found twisted into death scenes that defy logic. When a family stumbles upon this cursed place, they don't just face a series of grotesque events, they interrupt a ritual in motion, one that's already far too deep. The Brotherhood of Satan isn't remembered for jump scares or gore, it's remembered for how it unsettles the viewer at a structural level. The film rejects linear storytelling. It offers dreamlike cuts, unmotivated close-ups, dialogue that floats without cause. Some say it's poor editing, others suspect something darker. A film designed to disorient. Director Bernard McEvedy reportedly shot entire sequences in a meditative trance, without a formal script or storyboard. Many scenes were rebuilt purely from memory. The production, plagued by heat stroke, lost reels, and religious protesters, became as strange as the story itself. A film about possession made by a crew increasingly unsure who was truly in control. Today, the Brotherhood of Satan survives not as a cohesive narrative, but as a cryptic relic. One that hints, scene by scene, that its creators knew they were filming something more than fiction. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about the Brotherhood of Satan. Fact has shown the death that broke physics. The film doesn't start with screams or blood, it begins with an accident that shouldn't be possible. A crushed car, mangled in a way that defies mechanics, sits in the middle of the road, no other vehicle in sight, no sign of a collision, just a twisted wreck, and a family too late to stop. This moment was designed to fracture reality. According to L.Q. Jones, who also co-wrote the film, the sequence was inspired by a vivid nightmare he had during location scouting, a car crumpling inward as if folded by invisible hands. The crew attempted to recreate that dream using minimal FX and camera angles that avoided showing the actual impact because there wasn't one. What's stranger is what they used to simulate the mangling. A junked car rigged with underground winches, operated by locals. The shot was done in a single take, and no one, not even McEvedy, was able to fully explain how the final image came out so perfectly symmetrical, as if the vehicle had been crushed from the inside out. Some cast members later joked that the desert played along, others didn't laugh. The prop team swore the vehicle had changed shape overnight. This wasn't just an eerie prologue, it set the film's physics-free tone. The world of the Brotherhood of Satan doesn't obey gravity, time, or reason, and it never intends to. But here's the question. Was that nightmare Jones had really just a dream? Fact number 2. Ampere's town that was already mourning. When the family first enters the desert town of Hillsborough, it feels abandoned. Not in the literal sense people are present, technically, but in spirit, it's already dead. The streets are empty. Windows close without sound. And when the father, Ben, seeks help, no one meets his eyes. This wasn't just set design. The production deliberately stripped the town of any movement. Extras were told to exist like ghosts, not walk, not wave, not blink when in frame. Director Bernard McEvedy believed that silence had more psychological impact than screams. He wanted the town to feel like it was already grieving something it couldn't say out loud. But here's where it gets stranger. Several residents of the actual filming location, Charles City, California, refused to participate in any way. Some said the film's subject matter was sacrilegious. Others claimed they had seen real rituals in the desert decades prior and wanted no part in reawakening what was buried. So the filmmakers leaned into that tension. Every scene in town was shot under natural lighting, no music, minimal ambient sound. The result? A town that didn't just look haunted, it felt like it had made peace with its own possession. The real question, were the actors playing fearful townsfolk, or were they mimicking the people who lived there? Fact #3. The children never blinked. It's one of the film's most disturbing motifs. Children staring, silent, with eyes that seem disconnected from the faces that hold them. The first child we see doesn't speak, doesn't move, just watches. And in the next scene, another child is spotted holding a doll that's an exact replica of the family's own daughter. This wasn't accidental. The casting of the children followed a strict rule: no expressive actors. McEvedy auditioned over 70 kids, but only selected those who could maintain prolonged eye contact without flinching. One assistant casting director later confessed that some of the chosen children were genuinely unsettling, even during rehearsal. To heighten this effect, children were told not to blink during takes. One scene had to be reshot when a boy instinctively blinked after a door slammed nearby. They used menthol to induce tears, not to evoke sadness, but to create the glassy-eyed, possessed look seen throughout the film. But the eeriest moment came off camera. A production assistant swore that one girl, aged 9, continued to stare at the director between takes for nearly 10 minutes without saying a word. The Brotherhood of Satan made children into vessels, vessels for fear, vessels for adults who refused to see what was inside. So ask yourself, when does a child stop being a child and become something watching you instead? Fact #4. Deaths with no killer, no sound, no sense. The townspeople begin dying, but not by knife, gun, or fire. Instead, they perish in ways that seem orchestrated by an invisible force. A man is crushed inside a living room where no object moved. A woman suffocates in her bed, no trauma, no struggle. Every death is silent. Every corpse is frozen mid-scream. The original script had conventional death scenes, but McKevity tore them out 2 weeks before shooting. He claimed the horror shouldn't come from what we see, but from what we cannot reconstruct. To achieve this, each death was designed like a magic trick. The aftermath was shown, but never the process. One scene in particular, a child drawing an exact replica of a death before it happens, was inspired by a real-life police report the screenwriters had stumbled upon during research. It detailed a child's sketch found in a crime scene in New Mexico, months before the Brotherhood of Satan was made. During filming, some crew members began calling the storyboard the death map. As they progressed through scenes, they noticed that one death, a character crushed by an unseen force, mirrored a freak accident on set where a lighting rig collapsed without warning. So the question remains, did the filmmakers plan these deaths, or did something else insert its own choreography? Fact #5. The priest nobody trusted. When Father Elliot appears, the film offers what seems like a beacon of hope, a religious figure, soft-spoken, composed, ready to listen. But instead of leading, he is marginalized, dismissed by parents, shunned by the sheriff, avoided by children. This wasn't just a subversion of the holy savior trope. According to notes from the co-writer, the priest was meant to represent a faith that knows the ritual but lost the meaning. The townspeople don't reject God, they reject the institution that failed them when the first child vanished. Interestingly, the actor who played Father Elliot Charles Bateman was reportedly uncomfortable with the role. He was raised Catholic and initially refused scenes involving inverted crosses or blasphemous symbols. The crew compromised, using abstract symbols instead of overt satanic imagery. But one chilling moment stayed in the final cut, a scene where the priest walks through a playground and every swing moves on its own despite no wind. No special effects were used. The set was locked down, the footage was kept. Maybe the town doesn't want saving, McKevity allegedly said after that take. And maybe the priest wasn't sent to save anything, just to witness it fall. Fact #6. The cult was watching from scene 1. The audience doesn't meet the Brotherhood, the cult of elderly Satanists, until deep into the film, but their presence haunts nearly every frame from the start. In early scenes, an elderly man in a brown coat is visible behind a diner window. Another stands behind a curtain as the family drives past. These weren't background extras. They were cast members planted without lines, placed to be noticed only on rewatch. This technique was inspired by 1,960 Seconds conspiracy thrillers, especially The Manchurian Candidate. The director wanted the viewer to feel watched without knowing why. The cult's visibility wasn't accidental, it was the film's way of suggesting they never left the town, that they were always there, waiting. The robes weren't introduced until halfway through production. Initially, the cult was meant to wear business suits, but test shots revealed that this made them look like bureaucrats. McKevity rejected that. They shouldn't look like they work for anyone, he said. They work for something older, even stranger. One of the robes used in the final ritual scene was reportedly borrowed from a real Masonic lodge and never returned. So, if the cult was always there, how many scenes were they directing? Fact #7. The ritual was written in reverse. When the Brotherhood finally reveals itself, the rituals they perform are eerie, not for their violence, but for their incomprehensibility. Chanting loops backward, movements are mirrored, children stand in symbolic formations while elders recite incantations that seem off. They were meant to be. The ritual scenes were written and then reversed. Co-writer L.Q. Jones designed the script's black mass sequence by first writing the chant phonetically, then recording it, reversing the audio, and transcribing the backward sounds. The actors were trained to pronounce nonsense syllables that, when reversed again, would produce something closer to Latin. Sound designer Alan Splett, later known for working with David Lynch, helped mix the ritual audio. He claimed the final track included layers of reversed breathing, distorted chimes, and a low-frequency hum that made some speakers crackle without warning. But perhaps the most unsettling element was the decision to film these scenes in mirror image. One take in particular of an elder raising a knife over a child was flipped horizontally in post-production, making the actor appear left-handed when he wasn't. The goal? To disrupt subconscious pattern recognition, which raises a disturbing idea. Were these rituals merely filmed or accidentally constructed? Fact hashite. The first child taken was never cast. Midway through the film, a critical moment occurs. A young girl is shown lying motionless in a circle of candles, her eyes open, while an old woman chants nearby. It's the first visual confirmation that children are being used to house the souls of the cult. But this scene nearly didn't happen for one reason. The girl didn't exist. The actress who appears in the circle wasn't part of the original call sheet. In a 2006 interview, assistant director Paul Wernell recalled a crew-wide panic when the scheduled child actress fell ill. With no time to replace her, the scene was nearly scrapped until a local woman walked onto set with her granddaughter and volunteered. No formal release forms, no wardrobe fitting. The girl simply lay down in the circle and didn't move. She delivered the take in a single shot. And when asked how she stayed so still, she simply replied, "The old lady told me to." To this day, the crew can't identify her name. She and her grandmother vanished after the shoot. The production labeled her the Ghost Extra. Her face, frozen in that circle, remains one of the film's most disturbing images. So who was she? And what exactly did the old lady whisper before the cameras rolled? Fact #9, the possession scene was shot without a script. One of the most harrowing scenes in the Brotherhood of Satan is the moment when an elderly cult member begins the ritual to transfer his consciousness into a child. There's no gore, no spinning heads, just two faces, shown in flickering candlelight, slowly becoming one. But that scene had no written dialogue, no blocking, no scheduled camera angles. McEvedy reportedly instructed the actors to improvise the exchange of identity. He gave them only one direction. One of you is leaving. One of you is waking up. Then he cleared the set of everyone but the DP and sound operator. What followed was a 6-minute take of the child staring straight ahead while the old man spoke in riddles, some of which weren't in English. At one point, the child whispered a line that wasn't in the script at all. "Don't put him in me. I don't want to forget." That line stayed in the final cut, but neither actor remembers saying or hearing it. It wasn't captured in the boom mic, only in the backup lavalier audio. To this day, some crew believe the line came from a previous take. Others insist there was no previous take. So was this a performance or an invocation? Someone answered. Fact Hasson 0, the children started speaking like the dead. Halfway through the film, a subtle but chilling shift occurs. The children stop behaving like children. They begin mimicking speech patterns and mannerisms of elderly townsfolk who were once seen alive and recently pronounced dead. The most jarring example? A young boy sitting at a kitchen table, calmly buttering toast, quoting a Bible verse previously spoken by the town's pharmacist who died 2 days earlier. What makes this more disturbing is how the lines were delivered. According to interviews, the children weren't given scripts. Instead, McEvedy played audio recordings of the older actors reading lines and told the kids, "Say it back to me, like you already knew it." The voice coach hired for the production quit after 2 days, reportedly unnerved by how accurately some children could replicate the inflections of the elders. One child even asked, "Can I keep this voice forever?" There was no rehearsal, no coaching, just playback and imitation. So were the kids acting or remembering something they'd never lived? Fact #9, the adults were trapped in a town designed like a sigil. As panic spreads among the parents, they attempt to escape Hillsborough, only to find that every road out leads them right back in. Cars overheat, compasses spin, radios crackle with static when tuned past a certain frequency. This wasn't just a plot device, it was baked into the film's design. The layout of the town's key locations, church, schoolhouse, sheriff's station, playground, forms a rough pentagram when mapped. This wasn't coincidental. The crew created an overhead town plan that mirrored an actual occult sigil used in 16th century European ritual diagrams. That image was pinned to the production design board for months. More unnerving? A visiting consultant from UCLA's folklore department pointed out that one of the symbols in the town square resembled a real funerary glyph used by a now-defunct cult in Mexico. No one on the crew claimed responsibility for the design. In one of the film's cutscenes, the sheriff looks at a town map and says, "It's like the streets knew this would happen." That line never made it to the final cut, but it haunted the editing room for weeks. Was the town built to house a ritual, or was the ritual shaped to fit the town? Fact #2. The playground scene was real-time, real fear. There's a deeply unsettling moment when a group of possessed children gather at a playground. They don't speak, they don't play. They just sit on swings, on slides, on the ground motionless, staring upward, as though waiting for something only they can hear. No music, no narration, just wind and the occasional creak of rusted chains. This scene wasn't scripted in detail. It came from a moment between takes when McEvedy noticed the children resting in place, waiting for setup. He whispered to the camera crew, "Just roll, don't say a word." The footage was captured in one continuous 4-minute take, and it's the exact footage used in the final film. Nothing was directed, nothing was performed. The sound mix includes only natural ambience, but some audio engineers reported faint whispers when they looped the scene for mastering. One technician claimed the whispers sounded like old men arguing in reverse. McEvedy never confirmed or denied this. He simply called the scene "The Waiting," which begs the question, were the children waiting for direction, or had something already taken control? Fact: Hasson 3 adults began forgetting their own children. One of the most quietly devastating motifs in the Brotherhood of Satan is not just that children vanish, it's that their parents forget they existed. This is never shouted. It happens in background lines. A mother stares at an empty bed and says, "I feel like something's missing." A father looks through family photos and finds a gap where a child once stood. This effect was written late into the script. The writers had been reading about bereavement amnesia, a real phenomenon where trauma erases details of the lost. They twisted it into something darker, a side effect of the possession ritual, where the child's soul is overwritten and memory of them dissolves in the minds of those left behind. One deleted scene even showed a parent being handed their own child's drawing and asking, "Who made this?" But the eeriest moment came during filming. The actress playing a grieving mother broke down mid-scene, not from the script, but because she'd forgotten her line and couldn't remember the name of the child character she'd spent days rehearsing with. So was it just exhaustion, or did the film itself begin to rewrite its own memories? Fact: Hasson 4, the cult never blinked. Either, as the Brotherhood prepares for their final ritual, they form a circle, robes drawn, eyes open. Not one of them blinks. This wasn't CGI or post-processing. The director ordered a full 90-second take where the actors portraying the cult members had to remain absolutely still. No blinking, no shifting, no swallowing. Why? Because McEvedy wanted their presence to feel not just unnatural, but inhuman. He reportedly told them, "You've seen too much to ever blink again." To maintain this, actors used eye drops and saline solutions between takes. One even taped his eyelids subtly back to keep them from twitching. What's stranger, in post-production, the editor noticed that even in shots where the camera panned across the cult, no one blinked, even accidentally, not once, across over 5 minutes of footage. It became a superstition among the crew. Blink during a Brotherhood scene, and the reel would jam. By the end, the question wasn't, "Why aren't they blinking?" It became, "How did they know not to?" FACT. Hasson 5. The final ritual scene was lit by fire only and something else. The film's climax takes place inside an old church, where the final soul transference is attempted. The room is dark, lit only by candles and torches. The flicker gives everything an orange-red hue, like the whole scene was carved from ember and smoke, but there was no lighting rig. The scene was shot using only firelight, no artificial lights at all. Cinematographer John Arthur Morrill insisted this would give the ritual authentic elemental weight. To capture it, they used ultra-sensitive film stock, typically reserved for nature documentaries. And yet, the exposure was too perfect. Shadows landed where they shouldn't, faces were lit even when the flames were behind them. The crew suspected light leaks, but the footage remained consistent across multiple cameras. One assistant DP later said, "It was like the room lit itself." The audio team also picked up an unexplained low hum in the background like a choral drone with no source. McEvedy's only comment? Well, it worked, didn't it? Which leads to a haunting idea. Maybe the ritual didn't just light the scene. Maybe it responded to being filmed. Fact: Hashonix, when the child laughed like an old man. The final soul transfer happens in near silence. A child lies on an altar. An elder closes his eyes. There is no light flash, no scream, just a moment of stillness, and then laughter. But it's not a child's laugh. It's dry, raspy, ancient. That sound was not a dubbed effect. During the take, the child actor let out a spontaneous laugh. The production had planned to add audio later, but what came out uncoached was a laugh that sounded like it belonged to a man 4 times her age. The entire set went silent. One sound technician dropped his mic. When asked where she learned to laugh like that, the child replied, "He showed me." No one asked who he was. Even stranger, When the scene was looped in editing, the laugh varied slightly each time as if the waveform was alive. So did the elder truly leave his body? Or did something far older take residence? Fact Hassan 7. The town forgot it ever happened. After the ritual, the film enters a fugue. Townspeople return to their lives. Children walk hand in hand with parents who don't question where they've been. The priest vanishes. The sheriff forgets who he's been chasing. This was intentional. The writers designed the ending to simulate a memory wipe, not just for the characters, but for the audience. Dialogue becomes vague. Settings blur. Even the cinematography grows hazy, filmed through a fine layer of gauze to suggest detachment. But something darker was in play. An early cut of the film included a shot of a newspaper blowing through the street. On it, a headline: "Tragedy claims entire town no survivors." This implies the ending is not reality, but purgatory. That scene was cut. But the headline prop still exists, stored in a private collection, photographed once in 1992. One producer claimed the script originally ended with a title card: "Some towns disappear, others just forget." So, which is more terrifying? That the town died or that it chose not to remember? Fact Hassan 8. The final shot was never scheduled. The movie ends with a slow zoom out. The child from the ritual now sitting on a swing, gently rocking, smiling at no one. This scene was not in the final script. It was filmed at the end of the production day, with minimal crew. The director claimed he just wanted some B-roll, but once edited, the shot became the film's final image. The girl's expression is unreadable. Some say she looks at peace. Others say she's holding something back, something watching from behind her eyes. Here's the unsettling part. In that take, the wind begins blowing only at the moment the camera starts to roll. The swing moves, but only hers, not the others. The leaves behind her don't rustle, and when the camera cuts, the smile disappears. The actress has no memory of filming that shot. The swing set was removed the next day. No one knows where it went, so maybe that wasn't an ending. Maybe it was the beginning of the next ritual. Fact Hassan 9. The soundtrack was tuned to a frequency no one could hear. The film's soundscape is sparse, almost painfully so, but when music does appear, it slips under the radar. Viewers often describe a feeling of pressure or unease during scenes where little is happening. That's because the soundtrack wasn't composed for the ear, it was composed for the body. Composer Jamie Mendoza Nava reportedly experimented with infrasound frequencies below 20 Hz that are often felt, not heard. These tones have been linked to anxiety, nausea, and hallucinations in lab setting. While the studio denied using infrasound due to safety concerns, a memo from the sound department reveals an alternative theory. Some ambient tones were slightly detuned to 432.1 Hz, just off from the standard 432 Hz, often associated with calming effects. The result? A score that is never quite harmonious, never quite present, but always unsettling. Even modern viewers who remaster the film notice strange interference during these passages, especially when wearing headphones. So what's more disturbing? That you didn't hear the soundtrack or that it may have been hearing you? Fact #20. The final reel was damaged in a fire, but no one reported one. After the Brotherhood of Satan wrapped, the original negative was shipped to Los Angeles for duplication. Weeks later, a portion of the final reel arrived warped, with bubbling along the film edge. The damage looked like heat exposure melting from within. The shipping container, however, was intact. No external signs of fire, no temperature anomalies recorded, and no reports of incident from the courier company. The lab assumed it was a mechanical malfunction, but editor Richard Halsey said something else. It looked like the film tried to burn itself from the inside. That section of the reel contained a transitional fade from the ritual back to the town. What's eerie is that the distortion when projected created a strange flicker pattern across the child's face in the final scene. The crew voted to keep it in. Audiences in early screenings complained of nausea during that moment. So maybe the reel didn't burn by accident. Maybe it didn't want anyone watching that part again. Bonus fact, the script that was never found. Throughout production, the team used a working script titled The Brotherhood. But after filming ended, no full copy of the final screenplay could be located. Multiple drafts existed, hand-marked, incomplete, missing pages. When the DVD release was produced in the early 2000s, the restoration team sought out a clean script to archive. They contacted cast, crew, collectors. No one had it. Co-writer L.Q. Jones claimed he lost his only typed version in a house fire. Director Machiavetti's copy reportedly vanished after he loaned it to a journalist. And the production assistant who kept track of revisions died before completing his memoir. To this day, there is no definitive version of the Brotherhood of Satan's script. The film exists, the dialogue is there, the story remains. But the blueprint, the map of intention is gone. So the question isn't just what was filmed, it's this: what parts were never meant to be? And what parts were never written by human hands at all? Some films end when the credits roll. This one feels like it's still playing quietly somewhere in the background. The Brotherhood of Satan didn't just tell a story. It left pieces of itself behind, in flickers, in whispers, in missing pages no one ever found. So now we turn to you. Which moment felt realer than it should have? And what if this film wasn't just about a ritual? What if it was one? Let us know in the comments, and tell us which forgotten film we should dissect next.